Hey, it's Ashley.
And Patty, and we are your co-hosts for the Phoenix Forte podcast. Join us to connect to healing and joy after divorce by chatting with phenomenal guests, fearlessly confronting hot topics, and feeling the spirit with our mic drop moments.
So jump into the flames, rise from the ashes, and be strong and loud as you hang out with us here at Phoenix Forte.
Okay, welcome back, Phoenix Forte listeners. Oh my goodness, I am really excited about this episode today because we have just a very special guest. You will meet her very soon, and she's just near and dear to my heart. She is one of my most favorite people, and I'm so excited for everybody to get to meet her.
I fully agree. Our guest today is Kiki, and she is just this incredible ray of light. I feel like whenever but I guess I have been in the same room physically with you, but even just Zoom rooms, Kiki comes on and it just gets brighter. So we are so excited to have you on today, Kiki.
Oh, well, thank you. So excited to be here. You are also two of my most favorite people. So this is great.
Perfect. We're just going to chat today.
Yeah.
All right. Kiki, would you start with just giving us a little bit of your story and what you experienced with things, even if you'd be comfortable including how old you are as you were experiencing this and how long you were married and those kinds of things?
Yeah, sure. Feel free to jump in anytime with questions or anything. But yeah, I started dating my ex right when the pandemic had happened, but we had been friends previously for about 5 months and had all these little connections, and he just kind of like became one of my like better friends. And I thought, I was like, well, I know him super well, we're great friends, and we decided to start dating. And so we started dating. That was right when the pandemic happened. And then, pandemic was craziness. He moved in with me and my parents. Really got to know them for a couple months because everyone thought the world was ending. So we didn't know what was going on. But yeah, it was great. He, treated me amazing. I felt so special, and we just had such a good friendship, and we had so much fun together. My parents adored him. All my friends liked him. All the signs were going good. And I guess I should add in, like, I would say I'm a very careful person. Like, even he told me that he wanted to date me early on, and I was like, oh, let's keep going on dates and like see. And, he told me that he wanted to marry me a couple months into dating. And I was like, whoa, cowboy, like, let's just, keep dating and see what happens. So, it turns out that we dated for a year before we got married. And, about 4 or 5 months into the relationship, I had the conversation with him, kind of out of the blue. I was really uneducated about pornography, honestly. But I was just like, hey, like, what's been your relationship to pornography? And, the first thing he said was like, well, I've struggled with it in the past. We've had like pornography and I have had a complicated relationship. And so kind of as I started to like dig and ask him more questions, all of a sudden, like, it turned into him sobbing in my car and like telling me like this is the thing he dislikes most about himself, that he would give anything to not have this. And the frequency, which he told me, was once about every other month. And he told me I always go and see the bishop and I'm always working on it. And
what kind of emotions did you experience when you're having this discussion and he's breaking down in your car and sobbing to you about this thing?
Yeah, my first natural instinct was just to comfort him. It was so interesting because, I was like, trying to tell him like, no, you're not a bad person. Like, it's like, it's okay. I was very much in the role of like, let's comfort this man who's like sobbing in my car, that I didn't even like, it wasn't until like the next day where I was like, okay, wait, how do I feel about this? And because I was like pretty uneducated about pornography, I kind of did take it as like, oh, I guess I'm not attractive enough, that he like still needs to do that. And luckily I had like pretty immediate help with somebody like, wait, that's not what pornography is. So like I started to try to get more educated on it. We ended up meeting with the bishop because we were in the same church congregation, and the bishop told me like, it's totally your choice if you want to keep dating him, but I will tell you, like, I've never seen anyone that wants to change as badly as he does. And so kind of the agreement that we came to, I said like, oh, I wanted like a week or two to think about it. I think like after a week, I told him like, I'm okay to keep dating just as long as you're working on it and you're honest with me. And so from there, we would talk about it like weekly, and he would meet with like the bishop, and he joined a support group. And anytime we had a conversation about it, I would always hear things like, wow, I'm like so proud of myself. I was tempted today, but I didn't do it. I just feel so good that, I'm staying away from it. Or he would even say things like, oh, I'm so excited for my 1 year of like being clean. So just like really, he created like an environment where I felt like he was being really honest and safe. And like the amount of times I told him like, I am so grateful that you are working on this. And like, I'm just like so incredibly grateful. And like, you're so amazing. So pretty much when we had gotten to the point of getting married, he had told me it was under control, that, and that's what the bishop thought. That's what his therapist thought. We all felt like, he was in a good place, and I prayed a lot about the decision to marry him. Again, I'm very careful. So, it took like another 6 months to think about it. And I went in like thinking that things were in a good place. So yeah, then we got married, after a year of dating, and it was a great, ceremony. It was beautiful. People told me like, I now believe in love after coming to your wedding. Like,
How old were the two of you?
So I was 23, or was I was either 22 or 23. I'm bad with years. And he was 25.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, we got married, and as soon as like the night of the honeymoon, something was different. He wouldn't cuddle with me that first night after being intimate. And I remember just thinking like, well, that's weird, but also, he's probably just really tired. And I think that could be like the story of my marriage when we were together, is like, oh, this is weird, but also I can make up all these excuses. So that really became the name of the game. Oh, it's weird that he snapped at me, but also he's stressed about school. Oh, he doesn't want to spend time with me, but it's okay because, he just needs to finish up work. So yeah, as soon as we got married, it was like, I felt like I was kind of married to a stranger. All of a sudden, there was like no affection towards me. He was really standoffish, and it was really confusing because I'd gone from having someone who just told me how much they adored me and loved me and wanted to spend every second with me, to someone who was like, I felt like I was annoying all the time. There's even times where, he would be working on something in the other room, and I would set timers on my phone to not interrupt him because I didn't want to bother him. And I was trying to do everything I could to try to make him happy. I was doing all of the things I thought, like a newlywed should do. I was writing nice notes. I was, making us all of the meals. I was cleaning. I was studying my scriptures so hard and I think you're very similar to this, Ashley, but I was like, I can't change him, I don't know what's going on with him, so I'm just going to work on myself. I studied charity a bunch, trying to figure out how to, understand him, how to help him. And there was also something else I was going to say. I'm trying to remember. Oh, I guess another important thing is throughout all of this, I was always asking him, like, hey, something feels different to me. Something feels off. And every single time he would say, I don't know what you're talking about. I love you. How would you know if I didn't care about you anymore? Like, he would just always be, in a way, reassuring, but it didn't feel like reassurance because I could feel that something was off. And so it really got to the point where I felt like I was like going crazy. I remember about a month in to the marriage, I called my mom and sister and I just said, like, something feels off. He just kind of feels different. It doesn't feel like he likes me anymore. And my sister and mom, like, they didn't know what was going on. No one did. But they were like, oh, it's normal when you get married for things to feel different. And I remember, being like, okay, I guess I'm just like being dramatic. I don't know. I guess I just need a lot of attention. Like, I don't know what's going on. But yeah, so then I remember also like calling my parents a week later being like, hey guys, like, I think there's something wrong with me because I keep feeling like something's off, but he says it's not. So like, could you help me find a therapist? Because I think I'm like going crazy. And, they were really supportive of me getting help. So yeah, that was kind of it. I would say that environment was like a pressure cooker all the time. I just felt like I couldn't ever relax. I remember being like sad and scared to come home at the end of the day because I just didn't know what I was coming home to. But I never once thought like it was him. I always thought the problem was me. And
that you were too anxious or you were too needy or you were reading too much into it or you were imagining things.
Yeah. Or like maybe my expectations for marriage were just too high. And I just needed to, understand that that's not always what life is like. So yeah, I definitely felt that way.
Yeah, this question comes up for me because I like, this is something that we have so similar in our stories is that like, yeah, I never even thought that it could be pornography. Like I never in a million years thought, even though I had discovered it on advice in our home at one point in time, I still, when things got bad, I that was the furthest thing that I thought could possibly be the reason. So I guess I just asked, yeah, like, did that ever even cross your mind that that could be what was going on?
No. He told me he was good with it and I thought he was good with it. Everyone thought he was good with it. So yeah, never once did I have that thought either.
Yeah. We're using past tense words and we're sitting in a divorce focused podcast so we can make assumptions that then something that you didn't know came to light and now here you are on a guest on a divorce podcast. So what happened? What switched there?
Yeah. So again, it was one of those days where I could feel something was off. This was about 6 weeks into the marriage, so not very long at all. And, I just kept asking that question. I just kept asking. I was like, something feels off. We don't feel like we're connected. Like, have I done anything? Like, what is going on? And, this time he's like, well, I have something to tell you. And he said, I've been lying to you for the past 8 months about pornography. It never stopped. And I'm still using it regularly. And my reaction was like, wow, thank goodness we know what's going on. Everything clicked for me. And I was like, this is so great. We can get help. I was like, you know what? I am just so grateful that you told me. Thank you for sharing. This is so great. Like, I know we're going to get through this. We can get help. And I remember like, I was hurt though. I remember the hurt of being lied to for 8 months, but I definitely set that aside in like the hopes of being able to like reconcile things. So it was interesting because that night, I mean, I would be like sobbing and he would hear me from the other room and not really do anything to comfort me. But I remember seeing him cry that night, and I was trying to comfort him, and he's just like, I just miss my family so much. And I was like trying not to take offense, because I'm like, okay, like here's your like new wife that you see crying every day, and you're crying about missing your family, but it's okay. Like I was like, oh, that's really natural. Like, I guess that makes sense. That's something familiar to you. Like, I think you should talk to them about all of this. But I remember thinking it was strange that night that like there wasn't really any apology to me, or like sadness that he had been lying to me. But again, we just like went on with school because we were both busy and like working and in school. 2 days later, I remember him saying like, wow, Kiki, it just feels so good to put you first again. And I was like, thanks. But in my mind, I was like, wait, nothing's changed. Like, I was so confused. He's like, I can just feel it. Like, my world's in color again. And it just feels so good to know that you're my priority again. And I was like, okay, but like super confused. And then 2 days after that, I go to drop him off at work, and he gets out of the car and he doesn't say, I love you back. And he says, I don't think you'd want me to say it unless I meant it. And then just left the car, and very much felt like a hit and run. And I was like, what is happening? So that same day when I picked him up from work, he told me that he had talked to his family, and he had written out a note to me, and he read it to me. And the note said, like, I just want you to know that I've been miserable ever since we got married. I didn't think things through before we got married, and I don't love you, and I'm not attracted to you anymore. And I have motivation to work on the pornography, but I have no motivation to work out anything with you. Like, I'll never go to counseling. I just, like, he said, I know I'll never be happy with you, and you'll never be happy because I'll never be happy with you. And I need to like start doing things to make myself happy. And I was like completely in shock. When I picked him up from work, I was expecting to get an apology. And instead I got that.
Yeah. And
I was just like in complete shock. And I was like, what is going on? So that night we met with our married bishop, and he said the exact same things to the bishop. And afterwards, I was really, really grateful for this bishop, because my ex left and the bishop asked to speak to me privately. And he was like, usually I tell people to try to work it out in their marriage, but he's like, I would tell you run as fast as you can, because like I just see so much darkness in this person. And even though those are like great words, I was not ready to hear it. I was like, okay, no.
Did you leave there angry with the bishop?
I wasn't angry, but I was like, he doesn't know. Like, he doesn't know that we are us and we can make it through. Yeah. So, yeah. I'll also just throw out there, like, in our married ward, it was really hard for me because my ex had this personality, and that just like drew people to him. And, he was interesting because he was from another country and he wanted to go to law school. And all of a sudden I just felt like I was someone's wife and like not a person. Like, no one got to know me. And no one asked what I was studying, even though like I felt like I was doing really cool things with my career. No one really cared about me individually anymore. He got a calling and I didn't. And like, that's okay. That happens in wards. But like when it came down to it and I needed help, there wasn't really anyone that I could rely on in that ward.
So on top of experiencing this shift, there's also this isolation that was happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds pretty lonely to be walking through such a difficult time and not really feeling like there was anybody who maybe cared enough to get to know you before all of this happened, much less after.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But luckily, so I moved home to my parents because I just didn't feel safe to be near him. And luckily, I had family that really, really supported me. I lived with all of my siblings that summer. And the whole summer, I was still trying to talk to him. And in my mind, somehow he was going to wake up and realize, like, oh, wait, I'm crazy. I love her. Like, and it just never happened. You know, we would talk weekly and he would say things like, yeah, sorry, I just don't love you. Or, yeah, I don't miss you. I'm happier now that you're gone. Um,
How
he
long
would,
had you been married when he went from one day saying, I'm so happy that I'm finally prioritizing you and putting you first again, to 2 days later saying, actually, I'm unhappy and miserable and I have no motivation to be married to you anymore? How long?
we had only been married 6 weeks.
6 weeks.
Yeah, I remember the day he told me that he didn't love me anymore. It was like March 31st or April 1st, because I was like, is this a joke? Like, I was just like so out of my mind that, you know, this was happening.
It's like whiplash. That's the only thing that comes to me, like as she's talking, is I thought like whirlwind, and then I thought, no, it's more like whiplash, like literally like
Yes.
like one thing and then the next thing and the next thing, and then it's like, what is going on here?
Yes. And I think
Oh,
I think that's why I expected that he was just going to wake up one day and be back to normal.
yeah.
Yeah. Because
Just
he
because
had
I
suddenly
had,
woken up and felt that way, right? So
yeah,
Yeah,
if you
it's
can
like
snap out, why can't you snap in?
right back
right.
in. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I spent the whole summer trying to reason with him, trying to remind him. You know, I tried everything. We read scriptures together, we prayed. But yeah, he never changed his mind. It finally got to the point, I think it was like probably around the month of July, where someone asked me, like, what are you getting from talking to him? They were like, you just seem like every time you just leave more hurt. And that kind of made me pause. And so I said, like, you know, let's take a break from talking for a month. Because I'll also say, like, he didn't want to talk to me. It was me, like, wanting to talk. And it was so weird to go from someone who was my best friend to someone that I couldn't text, I couldn't call. We'd have these very rigid schedule calls that a lot of times he would try to find an excuse to get out of the once a week call. So
So
yeah,
you had been friends for 5 months, dated a year, married 6 weeks, and suddenly this person
wanted
doesn't even
nothing
want to
to do
talk on
with
the phone
me.
with you.
No, nothing.
How did that affect you mentally and emotionally?
Yeah.
I just felt so lonely. Things that I would talk to him about, I didn't know who to talk to about anymore. You know, like he had been my person that I considered safe, that I could talk to about my feelings. And I just didn't have anyone. I'm like, you know, like, oh, I'm in a lot of pain. I would love to talk to him about this. But how can I talk to him about this when he's the one who's causing all the pain and doesn't care? So it was like extremely, extremely lonely. And I spent a lot of nights just like sobbing on my bedroom floor. Tons of nightmares. um, every night he was in a nightmare, it seemed like. So I wasn't sleeping, I couldn't eat. Luckily, I had a job that I enjoyed, and that was kind of my saving grace to get my mind off of him, at least for, you know, 7, 8 hours a day. But yeah, it was incredibly lonely. Also because of, you know, I think it was a combination of who he was and COVID. Like I hadn't hung out with any of my friends in a year. And so I had so much fear of like, is anyone going to want to be my friend anymore? But, you know, I have to say on the other side, they've all taken me back with open arms and have been so supportive. But that was a really big fear of mine, is like, well, I wasn't there for them for a year. Why would they ever, you know, come from like be my friend? So it was extremely isolating and lonely, and no one really understands it. My parents tried their best, and they were great, but they didn't understand. I did find a lot of fantastic women who have gone through similar things through Worth and, through other support groups. And I remember being so nervous to come to one of those groups because I was like, they're going to think I'm so stupid because I was only like in the same vicinity as him, married for 6 weeks. Like everyone's going to think I'm just like some dumb teenage girl going through drama. And that was like the exact opposite of my experience. Like, if anything, I felt like people were even like, oh my gosh, like that is intense and so supportive. So I thought that was really interesting. Again, I was kind of like, degrading myself, being like, well, this isn't as big of a deal as someone who has kids. And that's what I would hear all the time when I would tell people what I was going through. They'd be like, well, at least you don't have kids. And I will say, like, that is a positive thing. But at the same time, like, I wanted to have kids with him. We had picked out names. So like when people would say that, trying to show me the positive, it was still like a piece I had to grieve. It's just kind of crazy.
Kiki, thank you so much for mentioning that. And if it's okay, I'm going to touch on that. Ashley, we actually had talked about this beforehand, that I've always been super grateful for you because you were somebody who I finally met that like knew what some form of this was like and didn't have any kids, who actually did want kids. Like it's like, and I've had that same exact experience. People like, oh well, at least you didn't have kids with them. Like check that off, and it's like, yeah, I am really glad I didn't have kids with him, but I really wish I'd had kids with someone else. Or I really wish there's a lot more to that. I do wish I was a mother though, so it does kind of suck that got taken away. So yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I think
you're so young, you'll just, you'll find someone else, and it's like, okay, this was like my person I thought forever.
Yeah, you signed up, for forever, and I think it's been a good experience. Like there's never, I think I've realized, like there's never a reason to try to show someone the positive side because they're trying their darnest to see it, most likely. And so like just sitting with them in their pain is like probably so much more helpful than trying to spin something.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that. I love that.
I feel like when we try to see the positives, we unintentionally disvalidate the hard, right?
Yeah.
That when it's, well, at least you didn't have kids. What I hear you guys saying is, right, that's true. So glad I don't have to deal with that mess. But I'm having to mourn the fact that I didn't get to have kids with this person that I thought I was going to have forever with. Like we were planning to have kids. We were planning a family. And so trying to point out this positive side was actually just one more really big hit. Versus when we just let someone be sad. It's so interesting how our culture is uncomfortable with sadness and uncomfortable with someone in pain, that they're like, oh, I gotta fix it. Like, just as a society, I'm a natural rescuer, so gotta fix it is something that I always used to jump to too. But really, even if we just look in the scriptures, like Christ never just jumped in and tried to fix it. More often than not, he was just quiet and sat with someone in their heartache. More often than not, he was right there crying over Lazarus as well. Did he know that he would raise Lazarus from the dead in 5 minutes? 100%. Did he know that it was going to be okay? And there were lots of silver linings? 100%. But the power that just validating someone's pain and being with them in that pain brings was not something he was about to skip over.
Yeah. I love that. That's so true.
For sure. And I completely agree with that too, that it's like, mourning with others that mourn. It's like just being with them and feeling that sadness. And then also just like that, yes, in our society, I feel like it almost, when we want to always try to look at the positive side or highlight the positive side of things, it's rejecting the negative side. So we call it negative, or the hard side that you were saying, Ashley, and that's all bad and you can't learn anything. You can't, like, there can be nothing, it's like just rejecting that because you want to look at the positive, but there's a lot of beauty in the hard too, there's a beauty in all of it. And so it's like, I feel like always trying to look to the positive side really rejects the hard, and just sitting in the hard and what maybe that could bring is just sitting in it. Yeah.
That's so true.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
We would love to hear from you. Please connect with us on social media at Phoenix Forte Pod, POD. Feel free to send us any questions or comments on Instagram.